The sirens pierced the afternoon silence as 3 squad cars screeched into David's driveway. Karen stood beside them, her finger pointed accusingly at the empty pool crater in his backyard, her voice shrill with manufactured outrage. He's destroyed neighborhood property values and violated city ordinances. But as the lead detective stepped forward, his eyes weren't on the drained pool, they were on the freshly disturbed earth beneath it, where David's shovel still lay abandoned. What Karen thought was her moment of vindictive triumph was about to become her worst nightmare, because some secrets are buried deeper than pool water, and some neighbors know exactly where the bodies are hidden. David Martinez wiped the sweat from his brow as he surveyed the massive concrete crater that had once been his backyard swimming pool. 3 days of pumping, and finally, every last drop of chlorinated water was gone. The late September sun beat down mercilessly on the exposed pool floor, revealing years of accumulated debris, coins and forgotten pool toys that had somehow escaped the net. But that wasn't what David was looking for. His hands trembled slightly as he climbed down the metal ladder into the deep end, his work boots echoing against the concrete. The neighbors across the street had their curtains drawn. They always did when he was outside, but he could feel eyes watching him nonetheless, particularly from the gaudy McMansion next door, where Karen Blackwood had made his life a living hell for the past 18 months. Looking for something, Dave? The voice made him freeze. Karen's perfectly manicured head appeared over the privacy fence. Her bottle blonde hair shellacked into submission, despite the heat. Her smile was all venom and smugness, the same expression she'd worn when she'd successfully gotten his fence. Height reduced by 6 inches through a homeowners association complaint. Just cleaning out the pool, David replied, not looking up. He kicked at a cluster of leaves near the drain, his heart hammering. Cleaning or destroying property values? Karen's laugh was like nails on chalkboard. Do you have any idea what an empty pool does to the neighborhood aesthetic? The Hendersons are trying to sell, and now they'll have to explain why their neighbor has turned his backyard into a concrete eyesore. David's jaw clenched. The Hendersons had been trying to sell for 6 months, long before he'd started draining the pool. But Karen had a talent for rewriting history to suit her narrative. It's my property, Karen, not if you're violating city ordinances. She pulled out her phone, snapping photos. Empty pools are breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Public health hazard. I've already called the city inspector. Of course she had. David resumed his search, moving more frantically now. Something substantial buried beneath the main drain. But with Karen watching his every move, documenting everything with her phone, he couldn't exactly start breaking out jackhammers. You know what your problem is, Dave? Karen continued, apparently settling in for a longer harassment session. You don't understand community standards. When Martha lived here, this place was pristine. Garden tours, holiday decorations, the works. Now look at it, Martha. David's wife of 23 years had been dead for 8 months now, cancer taking her slowly and painfully. While Karen had complained about the hospice nurse's cars parked on the street, the woman had actually left a note in his mailbox during Martha's final week, demanding he move the medical equipment delivery truck because it was lowering curb appeal. Martha's not here anymore, David said quietly, his voice barely audible over the scraping of his boots against concrete. No, she's not. And maybe it's time you accepted that and moved somewhere more ... suitable. There are lovely assisted living facilities. I'm 54 years old, Karen, where you wouldn't have to worry about property maintenance or community standards. David's hands stilled in the far corner of the deep end, barely visible beneath years of accumulated grime. Something glinted. Not metal. His detector would have caught that from above. Glass, maybe, or plastic. Are you even listening to me? Karen's voice pitched higher. I'm trying to help you understand that your antisocial behavior is affecting everyone. The Patels asked me if you were having some kind of breakdown. The Johnsons think you might be using drugs. That got his attention. David looked up sharply. Drugs? Well, what else explains this? She gestured at the empty pool. Normal people don't just drain 20,000 gallons of water for no reason. Normal people don't stop mowing their lawns, or answering their doors, or participating in community events. Normal people don't lose their wives to cancer. Karen's expression softened for exactly half a second before hardening back into righteous indignation. We've all lost people, Dave, that doesn't give you the right to let your property become a blight on the neighborhood. David turned away from her, crouching down to examine the object more closely. It was definitely intentional buried, not dropped. A small rectangular shape, maybe 4 inches long, wrapped in what looked like several layers of plastic bags. "What is that?" Karen's voice had changed, taking on a sharp, suspicious edge. "Nothing." David moved to block her view, but it was too late. She was already pulling out her phone again, zoom lens focused on his hands. "It looks like ... Is that a package?" "David, what did you bury in your pool?" The accusation hung in the air like smoke. David's mind raced. He could claim it was just debris, something that had fallen in years ago. But Karen's eyes were too sharp, her instincts for drama to finely honed. She smelled blood in the water, even though there was no water left. "David Martinez, what did you bury in your pool?" Her voice carried now, loud enough for any neighbors. Within 3 houses to hear, he grabbed the package quickly, shoving it into his jacket pocket. "It's nothing, Karen, just old pool maintenance stuff. Pool maintenance stuff doesn't get buried under the main drain." She was recording now, phone held high to capture everything. "Pool maintenance stuff doesn't require you to drain 20,000 gallons of water." David climbed out of the pool, quickly, his boots slipping slightly on the ladder rungs. Karen tracked his movement like a predator watching prey. "I think I need to call someone about this," she said, her thumb hovering over her phone screen. "This looks very suspicious." "Don't." The word came out harder than David intended. "Just don't, Karen." "Don't what?" "Don't report suspicious activity to the authorities. Don't document what appears to be evidence tampering." Her smile was triumphant now. "Oh, Dave, what have you been hiding?" The package in his pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Inside were things that would destroy more than just his life, things that would shatter families, ruin reputations, and confirm every ugly suspicion Karen had ever harbored about him. "You don't understand what you're getting into," David said, his voice low and desperate. "Some things are better left buried. Not in my neighborhood, they're not." Karen was already dialing. "Hello, police. I'd like to report suspicious activity. My neighbor has drained his swimming pool and appears to have dug up some kind of buried evidence." David felt the world tilt sideways. Martha had made him promise with her dying breath that some secrets would go to the grave with her. But Martha hadn't counted on Karen Blackwood's relentless nosiness and vindictive nature. "Yes, I have video evidence," Karen continued into the phone, her eyes never leaving David's face. "No, he's still here. He seems ... agitated." To drive him from the neighborhood she considered her personal kingdom. What she didn't realize was that the package in his pocket contained evidence of something far worse than any code violation or property maintenance issue. It contained proof that Martha Martinez, beloved wife and pillar of the community, had been living a lie for over 2 decades, and Karen Blackwood, in her infinite capacity for meddling and malice, was about to become the unwitting architect of her own destruction. And some secrets, when finally exposed, have a way of taking everyone down with them. The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. 3 patrol cars pulled into David's driveway with choreographed precision, their red and blue lights painting the suburban street in harsh alternating colors. Officer Martinez, no relation, despite the shared surname, stepped out of the lead vehicle, his hand resting casually on his radio. Behind him, 2 younger officers flanked the scene, while a 4th remained in his car, presumably running David's information through the system. Karen practically vibrated with vindictive excitement as she hurried around the fence to meet them on the front lawn. She clutched her phone like a trophy, the video evidence of David's suspicious behavior ready for immediate presentation. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly," she gushed, her voice pitched to carry to every house on the block. "I've been documenting some very concerning activity from my neighbor." In his pocket, feeling like a lead weight, he could slip through the back gate and disappear into the greenbelt behind his house. But running would only confirm every suspicion Karen had planted in the officers' minds. And besides, where would he go? At 54, with Martha gone and his savings depleted by medical bills, he had nowhere to run to. "Sir, I'm Officer Martinez with the city police," the lead cop called out, approaching the backyard with measured steps. We received a report about some suspicious activity. Mind if we have a chat? It's fine, David replied, though his voice cracked slightly. There's no problem here. Karen appeared at Officer Martinez's shoulder like a malevolent shadow. Him digging up some kind of package that was buried under the main drain, she held up her phone. I have it all on video. Officer Martinez's expression remained neutral. But David caught the slight shift in his posture, the way his hand moved closer to his equipment belt. The subtle widening of his stance. 23 years of marriage to Martha, who'd worked dispatch for the sheriff's department, had taught him to read the signs. Is that true, sir? Did you remove something from the pool area? David's mouth went dry. The truth was impossibly complicated, and lies had a way of unraveling under police scrutiny. Before David could answer, Karen thrust her phone forward. Look at this video, officer. You can see him grab something and shove it in his pocket. Something that was clearly buried intentionally. Officer Martinez accepted the phone, looking for any tell that might indicate how damning the footage appeared, but the officer's expression remained professionally blank. Sir, would you mind showing me what you found? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. David's hand moved instinctively toward his jacket pocket, then stopped. It's personal property. Family stuff. Family stuff that was buried under a swimming pool drain. Karen's voice dripped with skepticism. What kind of family buries things under swimming pools? Ma'am, I'll need you to step back and let me handle this, Officer Martinez said firmly. Karen's mouth snapped shut, but she didn't move more than a few inches away. Sir, I understand this might be sensitive, but we have a report of suspicious activity, and there's video evidence of you removing what appears to be a concealed package from your property. I'm going to need to see what you found, David closed. His eyes, Martha's voice, echoed in his memory. Promise me, David. Promise me you'll never let anyone find out. It would destroy everything, our reputation, our family, our friends. Promise me. But Martha was dead, and the living had to deal with the consequences of the dead's secrets. Pocket. The package was small, wrapped in multiple layers of plastic and duct tape, waterproof, clearly intended for long-term storage. David held it out reluctantly, and Officer Martinez took it with latex-gloved hands. Sir, before I open this, I need to ask, is there anything in here that might be dangerous? Drugs, weapons, hazardous materials? No. David's voice was barely a whisper. Nothing dangerous, just ... evidence. Evidence of what? Secrets. The other officers had moved closer now, forming a loose circle around the scene. Evidence that my wife wasn't who everyone thought she was. Officer Martinez carefully began unwrapping the package. The outer layer of plastic came away easily, revealing another layer of protective wrapping. Inside that, a sealed plastic bag, containing what appeared to be documents and photographs. These are the officers. Voice trailed off as he examined the contents. His expression shifted from professional neutrality to something approaching confusion. Sir, what exactly am I looking at here? David took a shuddering breath. 23. Years ago, my wife Martha faked her own death in Colorado. She'd been running from an abusive ex-husband who'd threatened to kill her. She changed her name, got new documents, and started over here. She only told me the truth 5 years ago when her ex-husband died, and she thought it was finally safe. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's mouth hung open, her phone forgotten in her hand. Officer Martinez stared at the documents. What appeared to be a death certificate, newspaper clippings, and legal papers. Bearing the name Maria Santos instead of Martha Martinez, your wife committed identity fraud. Officer Martinez asked slowly. She committed survival, David replied sharply. The man she was running from put her in the hospital twice. The courts gave him visitation rights with their daughter, despite documented abuse, so she did what she had to do to protect herself and her child. Her child, Karen's voice was strangled. Martha never had children. She always said she couldn't have kids. David's laugh was bitter. Martha had a daughter, Rebecca. She's 31 now, lives in Portland, and thinks her mother died in a car accident when she was 8 years old. The implications hit Karen like a physical blow, with Martha sharing intimate details about her own struggles with infertility, accepting comfort and advice from a woman who'd supposedly shared her pain. It had all been a lie. So this is ... Officer Martinez held up the package. This is documentation of your wife's previous identity, her real identity. She died, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. And when I found out Karen had been spreading rumors that I was on drugs, acting suspicious, potentially dangerous, David's voice hardened. I realized I needed to get rid of the evidence before someone like her decided to really dig into my business. Karen's face cycled through several shades of red. I was just concerned about property values and community standards. You were building a case, David shot back, recording my activities, questioning my neighbors, trying to get me declared mentally incompetent so you could force me out of the neighborhood. Don't pretend this was about community concern. To process the situation, sir, identity fraud is a serious crime, even if the motives were ... understandable. And if your wife was collecting benefits or filing taxes under a false identity ... she paid taxes. She never collected welfare or disability. She worked as a dispatcher for the sheriff's department for 15 years under her assumed name. The only fraud was the identity itself, and the woman she was hiding from is dead. David's voice grew stronger. My wife spent 23 years living in fear that someone would discover her secret. She died, still afraid that her past would somehow reach out and destroy the life she'd built. And now? Officer Martinez asked quietly. David looked directly at Karen, his eyes hard as stone. Now I don't give a damn. Who knows? Martha's dead. Her abuser is dead. The only person who could be hurt by this information is her daughter, who deserves to know the truth about why her mother disappeared. Karen's face had gone pale. The triumphant moment she'd been savoring had curdled into something ugly and complicated. She'd expected to uncover evidence of David's wrongdoing, drugs, financial crimes, something that would validate her campaign against him. Instead, she'd exposed the desperate survival story of a woman she'd considered a friend. I didn't know, she whispered. No, you didn't know, David agreed, because you never bothered to know Martha as anything more than a prop in your perfect neighborhood fantasy. She was just another piece of scenery that made your property values look good. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Sir, I'm going to need to take this evidence and file a report. The district attorney will have to decide whether to pursue charges posthumously, though given the circumstances and the age of the case, ... I understand. David nodded. But there's something else you should know, something that makes Karen's vindictive little campaign even more ironic. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through saved photos until he found what he was looking for. The image showed a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. This is from the Denver Post. The woman in the photo is Maria Santos-Mai, wife Martha. But if you look carefully, Karen's legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed onto David's lawn chair with a hollow thud, her phone clattering to the concrete pool deck. The color had drained from her face so completely that Officer Martinez instinctively stepped forward, concerned she might faint. Ma'am, are you all right? I need... Karen's voice came out as a rasp. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her temples. This is impossible. David, you're confused. You're grieving, and you're confused. Am I? David's voice carried a deadly calm that made the hair on Officer Martinez's neck stand up. Then explain how a woman who claims she's never been to Colorado happened to be in the background of a newspaper photo documenting my wife's supposed death. Coincidence? Karen's voice cracked with desperation. It has to be coincidence. People travel, David. Maybe I was visiting someone. Maybe you were following Maria Santos, David interrupted. Maybe you were the reason she had to fake her death in the first place. Officer Martinez held up a hand. Sir, these are serious accusations. Do you have any proof beyond this photograph? David smiled grimly and pulled out a manila folder. From behind one of the pool chairs, I've had 8 months to investigate since Martha died. 8 months of sleepless nights. Wondering why my wife spent her last days terrified that someone would find out about her past. She kept saying someone was getting close, that she could feel them watching. He opened the folder and spread several documents across the pool deck. Karen Holbrook, born in Denver, Colorado. Graduated from East High School in 1993. College records after that, but plenty of juvenile infractions, vandalism, harassment, stalking. The records were sealed, but death has a way of loosening bureaucratic tongues. Karen's breathing had become shallow and rapid. You investigated me? You sick, obsessive, the same way you investigated me, David shot back. the same way. You've been documenting my every move, questioning my neighbors, building your little case to have me removed from the neighborhood. The difference is, I found something." Officer Martinez examined the documents, his expression growing more serious. With each page, "Ma'am, these records show a pattern of escalating behavior. Multiple restraining orders filed against you by different individuals between 1995 and 2001. Those were dismissed." Karen shrieked. "Misunderstandings. I was young. I made mistakes. But you never, what?" David's voice cut through, her protests like a blade. "Never followed Maria Santos to her job, never showed up at her daughter's school, never sent her threatening letters telling her that her new identity couldn't protect her forever." The silence that followed was broken, only by the distant sound of more sirens. Additional backup, David realized. Someone had called in more serious charges. "I found them, Karen." David pulled out a small box from behind another chair. When Martha was dying, she became obsessed with checking the mail. Every day, sometimes twice a day, she said she was expecting bills. But we both knew she was waiting for something else. After she died, I found these in her bedroom, hidden in a box behind her jewelry. He opened the container to reveal dozens of letters, all addressed to Maria Santos at various addresses. The postmarks spanned nearly 2 decades, and they were all from the same sender. K. Holbrook. Officer Martinez picked up one of the letters. With his gloved hands, his face darkened as he read. "Ma'am, this appears to be a death threat." "It's not." Karen lunged forward, trying to grab the letter. "You're reading it wrong. I was trying to help her. Your fake life won't protect you forever. I know what you did, and I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too. You can run, but you can't hide from the truth," Officer Martinez read aloud. "How exactly is this helping?" Karen's composure finally cracked completely. Tears streamed down her face as she rocked back and forth in the chair. "She killed my brother. She killed Tommy, and then she disappeared, and everyone acted like she was the victim." The confession hung in the air like a toxic cloud. David felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't what he'd expected to uncover. "Your brother." Officer Martinez set down the letter carefully. "Ma'am, I think you need to start from the beginning." Karen's sobs came in great, heaving gasps that shook her entire body. "Tommy Holbrook. He was my older brother. He was dating Maria Santos, and she, ... she killed him. She staged that car accident, made it look like she died too, but she survived. And she ran." David stared at her in shock. "Martha never mentioned a brother. She said she was running from an abusive boyfriend." Karen's laugh was bitter and broken. "Try husband, Maria Santos. Was married to my brother for 3 years. 3 years of her manipulating him, isolating him from his family, taking his money, and then when he finally stood up to her, ... she wiped her nose with the back of her hand, leaving a trail of mascara across her cheek. The police said it was an accident. Single car crash on a mountain road. But I knew better. I knew she was in that car with him, and I knew she found a way to get out before it went over the cliff." Officer Martinez was taking notes now, his pen moving rapidly across his pad. "Did you report these suspicions to the police at the time?" "Of course I did. But she was so good at playing the victim. Poor little Maria, afraid of her abusive husband. She had restraining orders against Tommy, claimed he was stalking her, hitting her. All lies." Karen's voice rose to a shriek. "She was the abuser. She was the one who destroyed everything." David felt the world tilting sideways. The woman he'd loved for 23 years, the gentle, caring person who'd nursed him through pneumonia and held his hand during his father's funeral, was being described as a manipulative killer. "That's impossible," he said weakly. "Martha wasn't capable of violence. She couldn't even kill spiders. She'd capture them and release them outside." Because she was playing a role, Karen turned on him with renewed fury. "Don't you see? She spent 23 years practicing how to be the perfect wife, the perfect neighbor, the perfect victim. But I knew who she really was underneath all." "That's so you followed her," Officer Martinez said quietly. "You tracked her across state lines, found out her new identity, and then what? Tormented her for 2 decades. I wanted justice," Karen screamed. "I wanted her to pay for what she did to Tommy. But every time I got close, Every time I gathered enough evidence to expose her, she'd move or change jobs or find some way to slip away until she got sick. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture that made David's stomach churn. You knew she had cancer? I knew she was dying? Yes? And I knew that meant my last chance for justice was slipping away. So I moved here. I bought the house next door. I became her friend. Karen's smile was grotesque through her tears. I spent 2 years becoming the perfect neighbor, earning her trust, waiting for her to confess, waiting for her to finally tell someone the truth about what she'd done. But she never did, David realized. No, she took her secrets to the grave, just like the coward she always was. But I knew she must have kept evidence somewhere, insurance, in case anyone ever connected her to Tommy's death. So I stayed. I watched you. I waited for you to reveal. Where she'd hidden the proof, Officer Martinez closed his notebook with a sharp snap. Ma'am, you're describing 2 decades of stalking, harassment, and potentially interstate fraud if you were sending mail under false pretenses. I was seeking justice for my murdered brother. That's for the courts to determine. Right now, I need you two. The sound of screeching tires interrupted him. A black sedan pulled up to the curb, and 2 people got out. A woman in her 30s, with Martha's dark eyes and David's jawline, and a man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. David's heart stopped. He recognized the woman immediately from the photographs Martha had hidden away, photos of a daughter she'd been forced to abandon to keep them both safe. Rebecca, he whispered. The woman strode across the lawn with purpose, her lawyer trailing behind. Her gaze took in the scene, the empty pool, the scattered documents, Karen sobbing in the chair, and the police officers standing amid the chaos. Mr. Martinez, her voice carried Martha's slight accent, the one that only emerged when she was emotional. I got your message. I think it's time we talked about my mother, and about the woman who's been terrorizing both our families for the past 23 years. Karen's head snapped up, her eyes wide with recognition and terror. No, you're supposed to be dead. She said you were dead. Rebecca's smile was cold as winter. Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated, just like my mother's. She turned to Officer Martinez. I believe you have questions about a car accident in Colorado. I was in that car. I survived. And I can tell you exactly what happened on that mountain road 23 years ago. The empty pool suddenly felt like a stage, and everyone gathered around it was about to discover that the real drama was just beginning. Karen Blackwood, who had spent 2 decades seeking justice for her brother's death, was about to learn that some truths are more terrible than any lie, and some secrets, when finally exposed, don't bring justice, they bring devastation to everyone within their blast radius. The afternoon shadows were growing longer, and in the distance, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon.